What's up, y'all? Let me play this guitar that's too large for me for an intro. It's also steel strings and I play nylons, usually. Yeah, okay. And I'll keep it here in my lap for now. It's huge, if I were to say. But my name's Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and this is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. I play half-sized guitars, somewhere around that size, right? And nylon strings with a radius. But this is my mom's guitar. This is what I got access to at this current time. So today is the 11th of April, 2025. Here we are in the Image Clothing Company podcast, 1/3 of our company as a whole, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things. We get into it, and I will. What I'll do is I'll talk about all three sides of our company. I'll talk about where clothing needs to sit, and then we'll get into the discussion. This is episode 97 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled, Why is Your House So Big? All right, stick around if you'd like. If not, hey, it's up to you, but it'll be cool. If you don't think so, I don't care. I'm saying it will be. So, okay, sweet. Let's get into this. Three sides to us, right? The main side is another third, the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. And over there, I talk about the human body. Meaning, us as a company, we address the human body's natural function. We come at it through the skeletal system. The only thing that doesn't change out of the things that get talked about, right? Fat content amount changes. Muscle mass amount changes. But the body has a neutral position within every joint. And it needs to just be allowed to be in that. And really, it just should always dwell within that unless it's being used to do a certain function that's not resting. So we talk about clothing because it's the only thing placed onto us physically, so it alters the body. There's a center line, the sternum, the nose, the trachea, the spine, the jaw, stabilizing the entire body, all have to be in the center, otherwise the body's damaged, okay? When we place clothing on us, if there's any imbalances at all, it goes straight to the body as well. Unnatural materials that didn't even exist just decades back from today's date damage the body. Muscles within the body contract, meaning getting shorter. Clothing often nowadays is stretchy, and it goes the opposite direction of the only way the muscles will ever work. So, yeah. Eating, standing, sitting, walking, all the things that the human body does, being a physical, mechanical machine, we talk about under In the Image Clothing Company and how to just do it. There's only one way any of that'll happen, the way that it was designed to. So, we talk about it. We give context, we give understandings, we give information, and we change lives. No joke. So, don't believe me, as I say, right? You don't have to believe anything that I say. Truth is truth. Whether I'm saying something and trying to be right about it, I could be wrong. Or if I'm saying something is so wrong and I want it to be, it's actually maybe right. Truth is apart from all of us. We're designed in the image of Jesus Christ, our living God. We didn't design this body. We can't decide how it works. In the Image Clothing Company podcast has an episode titled, We Didn't Design It, We Can't Decide It, okay? We got a lot of episodes, brother. I told you which number this is, and we'll talk about it as we do them, right? But we have another third of our company, which is In the Image Clothing Company Music, where I show sizings and setups of guitar, and we get into all things music. I'm a fingerstyle guitarist, man. Nylon strings. Radius. The hands are rounded, okay? Always have been. Even though classical flat fretboard guitars have been around for a long time, human beings have been around longer and their hands are round. All right? It's just how it is. So, yeah. The hands are essentially the shoulders. The feet are essentially the hips. There's videos under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company talking about both of those things and their correlations, as I just mentioned them. So, alteration to the hands from incorrect setup in guitars alters the shoulders, then the entire body. If there's anything within the body trying to compensate for something else not being able to work, then the body's being very much altered. It only will ever work as an entirety. Everywhere that any of it goes, all of it does. It has to stay activated as a whole. It would be if nothing altered it, but we place clothing onto us. And nowadays it's become very, very unnatural. The goal is natural. The key word is allowing the body to work under In the Image Clothing Company. So, where clothing has to sit for everybody, man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the earth, any time period to ever be, any human being. It's got to be in the same location. No opinion, right? You can't do anything besides allow the body to work. You can't. There's no possible way to train the body. There's no such thing as posture. There's just the only way the body is designed to stand vertically on an earth with gravity, pulling it straight down. Okay? So, pants need to be entirely above the hips, all the way off the pelvis, so there's no restriction to the pelvis as a whole. Slightly higher in the front than the rear for the waistband angle of our pants, because the core muscles of the front of our body only ever work how muscles within the body do, by shortening. So that's the only way that will be allowed to just be while wearing pants. Secondly, we're talking about tops now. When we wear tops, the top seams atop our shoulders need to be evenly behind the bones on the peak of our shoulders. Those are the other end of our collarbone that comes down to the center of our sternum here in the front, below our throat, right? Our shoulders naturally will only ever work behind our head, where these upper trapezius muscles connect to the very base of the rear of the skull, along the cervical spine, which is the part of the spine that's the neck, and then to the top/rear of the shoulder. So that's how we allow that to just be what it will be, and the only thing that ever can be. I feel like I'm almost forgetting to say something. I don't know, guitars, dude. I'm a really good guitarist, bro. Maybe we'll play that quite a bit throughout this, as I do sometimes, more than just the intro. So if so, then cool. Maybe I just want to verbalize it, because I'm almost not so focused on what I'm saying within this intro, because I'm really convicted about guitar. So there's some context on that. Now, the edge seams of our shoulders need to be right at the very edges of our shoulders. That's where the shoulder joint is. You have a seam anywhere else, and intending on that seam being the hinge, when the hinge of the shoulder itself is only in the location that it is, right? It has to mesh. It has to be the same. So, yeah. Two things we call prerequisites under In the Image Clothing Company, because it's a little bit different than where clothing sits. One of them is shoelacing. There's not always shoelaces in our shoes. The other one is tags, and there's not always tags within our clothing. But when there is a rope weaved across the foot, we call it a shoelace, sure, but really it's just a rope. And there's only one way to do a weave across the top of the human foot's operation, with gripped arches opposing the center line of the human being that we discussed a minute or 5 ago, give or take, right? I'm giving information that ideally you take in because it's truth. In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique is what we title that. Found wherever you find us, 5 words as a whole. In the Image Clothing Company. With that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the center line of the human being on both feet. Otherwise, rotations from the feet to the tips of the fingers to the tip of the head, and your body's damaged greatly. Chronic patterning, scar tissue, and pain. I've experienced it myself. Secondly, we remove all tags from clothing. Anywhere a tag's placed inside of the thing that we place onto our being will just either cause a physical gap, changing the skeletal system's only working position, and or not allow the musculature to activate. Then you've got compensation trying to happen, the body's damaged. That's a theme that happens when we don't let it do the only thing that it ever will do, right? Damage. So, tongues of the shoes as well, right? Anywhere in the shoes, anywhere, period. Tags need to be removed. So, yeah. Don't get so attached to them, you know? Brand names often are on tags, and I don't care. You know what doesn't care? Your body. You know what might care is your ego. You know what this is episode 97 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, Why is Your House So Big? Because your ego cares about it. Right? That was my little segue into the episode. Because here's the thing, for real, why is your house so big? That's not a metaphorical title that's going to transition into something different. We'll talk about all the things that we do, and in ways, yeah, it's metaphoric, but it's literal. Just like the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I've been talking about that a lot recently in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, brother. The gospel is literal. The metaphors and the wordplay, but sometimes we just don't really quite see it until we do. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know until we know it, right? But why is your house so big? Some people got mansions, dude. Some people have really big houses. And why? You can have any reason, and sure. And you can have as big a house as you can have. I don't care other than why. It costs more money. It's more space to clean. It's more responsibility in a lot of ways. And you probably don't use anywhere near close to getting close to all of it, right? Some people have big houses. And why? Why is your house so big? I mean, we could just end the episode right there and just have people ponder on that. There's been people in my family. The person who owns the house that I currently dwell in is my grandpa. And he's owned some pretty big houses in his life. And I'm not trying to condemn people, but it's, like I said, it's a thing to ponder on. Why? Because why is your car so fast? Right? You see what I mean? A house is a place to live in. You got enough room to live? Good. Any more than that is more than you need. Your car is a thing to give you transportation. And if it does that, great. There's speed limits on most all roads across the earth. And you can't really exceed those speed limits without potentially having to have a consequence, pay a fine, or, be locked in somewhere for a while, kind of like timeout for adults. Seriously, right? So, if your car goes faster than the fastest speed limit that's around, why? If your house has more bedrooms than the amount of people that you have living in it, except for maybe like a guest room or two, if, right, maybe you do have people over pretty often, okay, that makes sense, but then like excessive rooms, why? Right? And I'm asking this question for you to ponder on. Why? What are you doing with the space? And really, what are you not allowed to do with the amount of money that's going to your house payment? Because it's so much bigger than it actually needs to be. Right? Why is your house so big? I don't want a big house. Because it's more space to try to figure out what to do with. It's kind of like an obligation. It's like, well, I just found out last week after 5 years of living in my house that there's a couple of rooms I didn't know were there. Well, I think that problem happens to some people, at least borderline. Like, some similar things to that go on sometimes. What is that all about? There's people out there, and we're not comparing, we're not saying like you used up all the bricks to make your big house and now somebody doesn't even have a smaller one. I'm not saying those kind of things. Like, whatever, do whatever you want. But the whole point is there are people out there with nothing and they don't feel like they're lacking anything. And that sounded like it didn't really make sense, but it's the case, I mean, in the ways that it is, meaning people just have very little, but they don't need any more and they know it. And it's almost always the case that the people with the really, really big houses, I used the word really twice, now I've said it 3 times, because sometimes houses are large, dude. Holy cow. They get big sometimes. what I'm saying is a lot of times it's those people that actually feel like they don't have very much. And I was saying similar things to that in these past couple episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. The last one, I referenced a song by NF, the rapper, and I'm not going to say the line again within this, but check that out if you'd like to, because, I mean, some people just have so much stuff, and then they feel like they have less at that point than they did when they had less. Yeah. And there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Minimalism. And you don't have to put a term on anything, and you don't have to be a part of something like that or whatever. But just, there's reasons to those type of lifestyles and that way of living, because less is more, and it's not an opinion, because you only have a certain amount of focus you can put on stuff. When you have so many things, you can't even focus on one thing, because in the back of your mind, you got 1,000 other things, hypothetically. I mean, maybe even more than 1,000, though, really, no joke, that you're like thinking about, right? Because you've added so many things to you. But every one of those things leaves. You're the only thing that actually is here, right? And the Spirit of God. That's what we talk about. The human body, right? I mean, we're in the Image Clothing Company. Our whole thing physically is allowing the human body to work and then spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ through all that we do. But the whole thing with that is those are the same, because God designed our bodies, Christ himself. So, yeah, right. In the image of Jesus Christ is how our bodies were designed, hence the name In the Image Clothing Company, 5 words as a whole. Hey, welcome. Thank you. And scene, right? People add things to their life, and you have every right to if you are doing it, right? Ideally, do everything you can do just ethically, right? But sure, have a really, 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 really excessively large house if you'd like. That's fine. But why? Just why? I mean, it's like that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, What's the Reason? I mean, why do you have such a large house? Because either you're going to be the one to try to keep it clean and organized and keep up on the maintenance of 25 faucets, 14 bathtubs, and you know what I mean? Like, it gets crazy sometimes. Really, I mean, people really have that going on in their house. That high of number of things. Like, actually, some people might not have ever really seen that, but that really does happen on the earth. And, well, either you're trying to do those things yourself, or maybe you're hiring people to do it for you, and you could call them a maid or a butler or a custodian or whatever it is. And for whatever specific thing, maybe you've got different people that you specialize in stuff that you're hiring to come over to work on parts of your house that you kind of forgot you had because it's so big. So why, right? I mean, like, actually, why? Because you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want in this life. Literally. I mean, you can go out there and do some crazy things that probably shouldn't be done, but if it can happen, it can happen. There's just always repercussions for things, no matter what. Yeah, so do it, right? Go get the big house, but if you don't even know why, a lot of times people don't want to, and those people are the ones that do it, right? In times. But there's like underlying reasons, like, what is it doing for you for your house to be so big? Yeah. I just, I don't want a big house. I said that earlier, but I'm saying it still, and it's because it's true. There's no point. If I'm talking just out of me, right? If I'm the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and I am, and if my name is Evan Strong, and that's what I was given at birth, what I'm going to be speaking out of my own doings is the things that I like to say is personal experience that I relay and talk about. So you don't got to care about nothing, but just for the sake of context, I'm the one speaking. I don't care to have a big house. And in fact, on the other end, it's actually so much easier to have a smaller house, right? Unless you're out there seeking discomfort and, sure, it's very uncomfortable, certainly, to have such a large house. Just trying to keep track of anything, right? I mean, you set something down in a room and you got to walk a quarter of a mile just to find it because you went from the bathroom to a bedroom that was like clear across the house, right? It is easier to have a smaller house. There's less to focus on, less to keep up with maintenance wise, as I was saying. You just have less storage space, and so you'll have less things, and then your focus and priorities can be easier to manage and put in the right places because, I mean, it just gets excessive. And that's one of those things, like, there's no opinion to that. People know. I mean, they get all high wired and stuff, man, and their anxiety's out the wazoo, and, you know, they're moving a zillion miles an hour in life because you kind of have to, or else you won't even, get out your front door before the day's over because from where you woke up to exiting your dwelling is like a, you know, distance to cover. I'm serious. I mean, like, there's a level of that that's not an exaggeration. And so, all right, it's your choice, but, I mean, the whole thing is what I said earlier everything leaves, and maybe it's not till you die, but, we die and then we get resurrected through Jesus Christ, and our bodies become perfected. And read the Book of Mormon, read the Holy Bible, check out the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Stick around for In the Image Clothing Company podcast. We talk about the truth of all things, aka the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I love how that's interchangeable back and forth, right? You can start by just saying the truth of all things and then just say, by the way, that actually has a title, and it's just God himself, Jesus Christ. So, why is the house big? It probably doesn't need to be as large as it is in the case of people's large houses. So, yeah, I mean, because I get having a guest room, cool. But, like, maybe one. And if you have people over more often, then, I mean, how many people you really having over, right? I mean, times and places and people are different in the ways they are, but yeah. Why is your car so fast? You're not going to exceed the speed limit all that many times before you get caught by a law enforcement officer. And that looks a little bit different at different parts of the earth, and in different time periods. But there's a limit to how fast you're allowed to go on a certain road. And if you exceed that, it's dangerous because you're just going such a different speed than the people around you at that point. Because there's also, at least here in the United States of America, there's a speed limit on the slow end, right? Like if our highways or our freeways, we call them, here in Utah, they're 75 to 80 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour, somewhere around in there, depending on the part of the state of Utah you're in. There's actually a slow end too, and I think I'm not going to say exactly what it is because I don't know for sure right now. And it might have changed anyway because speed limits used to be different than they are now. Things just fluctuate, right? Worldly things that change, and we try to talk about eternal truths here that don't. Meaning we do talk about them, but we try to pretty much only talk about things that don't change. And the way that you do that, the only way that you can actually ensure that happens is by discussing Jesus Christ himself, the God of all. Yeah. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled One God. Check that out if you'd like. So, you go too excessively slow on a road and you're just going such a different speed than the people around you. It's dangerous. So on both ends, I mean, why is your car so fast? Because here's the thing, these things come with more money. And the whole focus about money, well, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Power and Poverty, and another one titled Money Hungry, right? Money's not a real thing. Check out that second one I just referenced if you want to check. Well, yeah, it's not. There's no opinion to that. It's a representation of value. But what I'm saying is fast cars, meaning cars that are able to go quite quickly and also fastly, right? And big houses, they're things that come with money, usually. And so money is something, same thing. Why do you have so much money? Why is your bank account so stacked? It might seem like a good thing, depending on who you are, but there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Daily Bread. And really, we only need what we need every single day of our lives. And if we can replenish it the next day, then we're fine. And it's actually a commandment, right, in the ways that you can go read in Holy Scripture and not have to take Evan Strong's opinion on anything because it doesn't matter if you believe me or not. But this is what I am saying, though, is that, right? I mean, your car is too fast for the roads around you. Your house is too big for the amount of people that are occupying it. Why? Because you can, by all means, if there are means to it, but everything worldly is just a means to an end, but, right, eternal life is something that doesn't. And you see what I mean? You see what I'm saying? You see the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ? It's a literal thing. It's the truth of all things. So why is your house so big? I mean, people have so much more going on, when their houses are just too big. And what I mean by that is they're not allowed to do as much because they have to do so much that's not even necessary to keep up the lifestyle they've chosen. Because that's a big house, bro. Right? Just the ones that we're thinking of and talking about within this. And you can do whatever you want, bro. But you won't be able to do that much if you got to try to keep up on your house. If you got to try to baby this car that cost you so much money, right? Because some of these high-end car brands, these supercars and hypercars and really fast vehicles, they don't even let you purchase them unless you are a certain person. I mean, they have parameters around, who you are and stuff. Even if you have all the money that it takes to purchase it, sometimes they won't even let you without, like, certain things, right? Because, I mean, you got to pay the insurance too. At least here in the United States of America at this time period, we have to pay insurance on things like that. You can't own a home without having insurance, at least in most places. And you can't have a car that's legally allowed to go on public roads without having insurance on it, right? And so, I mean, if you can purchase something that, it's not about money. Money doesn't exist, as we established in that episode I referenced. There's no opinion to that. I want to say that so clear before you start thinking I'm just saying stuff. It's the truth. It's just a representation of value, and it always changes. What we call quote unquote money, nowadays it's something that didn't even exist in the past, and we call it money, but it couldn't have even been something to even think about because it was made up, since it used to not even be something, right? It's just the truth. So the point is, though, yeah, you got to pay insurance on the car and insurance on the house, and you got to get that resource we sometimes refer to as money some way to be able to keep up on those things. Otherwise, they get taken from you before you die. That happens, right? So don't fret if it has happened to you. It might be one of the best things that has. And if it ends up happening, it might be the best thing at that point in your life. getting something stripped from you. I got hit by a truck, you know. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Back to Bite, and I explained my situation with that. It was a great thing to happen, you know. So, anyway, I mean, there's just a lot in life that you can choose to have, but you've chosen something that's way more than you need in these hypotheticals. And so, why? You know, because there's a number of reasons, and really that number probably doesn't end. An infinite amount of reasons why you could choose something like that to be the case. But yeah. You know, I've just been thinking about this because I've been watching people up in Alaska. They call it The Last Frontier, right? The TV show that I've been watching is called Life Below Zero. And it's really cold up there. It's in the Arctic, right? It's very far north on our Earth. And it's a wild place, man. And a lot of the people that I'm watching on this TV show, they have just one small little cabin. And the way that they heat it is just by chopping down trees and burning the wood. And what they eat is just the things that they can get around them from the land. And as we talk about, you know, and as we have in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and it's just the truth, regardless of who has any kind of opinion on it, because you either care a lot about the big house or you know how to actually be joyful. Because, like I was saying, you know, those people who have the big house, the fast cars, and all the things like that, they're almost always the people in life, if we're just talking about it as it is without trying to compare as if someone's better. We're equal human beings, but those people with these things that we're talking about within this episode 97 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Why Is Your House So Big? Those are usually the people who aren't so content, but they've got so much more than a lot of other people do. You know, so yeah, these people in this show, and I feel very similar to them, you know. I live in a nice house, if I were to say, and I don't pay anything to live here currently, and that's been a blessing. But the lifestyle I live, I eat, you know, very little food, very little variety of food, and I have very, very few things, and I just live such a simple life, and my lifestyle wouldn't really change very much at all. And some people are ignorant to stuff like that. They kind of think so, but then they don't really realize how much they're like taking part in the modern amenities of the world, you know. But in my personal case, it really is the truth. My lifestyle wouldn't really change very much at all if I just lived out in the woods in, you know, like a little cabin and had not much else besides the land around me, some clothing, and, you know, ways to make food, right? I'm vegetarian, so hunting isn't something I'd be really taking part in if I were to be vegetarian still. But, you know, if I could grow some stuff and have some agricultural, cultured cow's milk and stuff, my lifestyle really wouldn't change. I live a very unconventional life for the area that I live in. So I seem so different to the people around me, but then if I were to be in other parts of the earth, I would fit in better in ways, okay? Times and places. But that's just the thing, right? Is joy comes where joy comes, and really true eternal joy is only Jesus Christ. Happiness flies and fleets and flows and stuff. And it's just ironic, you know. It's that, like we say, it's the paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ. The bigger houses actually a lot of times don't allow you to feel as much joy if you're the owner of them. And then, you know, having a small, humble abode. Check that out, right? Literal terms. Yes. Okay. So yeah. I mean, it's literal, dude. All these phrases, all the parables, all the things and the things and the stuff and things and things and stuff and your stuff and things inside the things you got, and now you got to stop because just get less. Less is more. There's no opinion to it because yeah, you live in some little shack And usually you're almost guaranteed to at least have a higher potential to be more joyful than having such a large house. It's just excessive. So, yeah, just happens, dude. And, I mean, people are individuals, and sometimes it's happening for reasons, and I get that. And maybe you really do have a lot of people over often, or maybe you have a company where you're hosting things and stuff and whatever. And right, I get all casual with it because, sure, I mean, there's reasons to everything. But, why is your house so big, right? So, anyway, yeah. Anyway, and anyway, I probably gonna play some more guitar here within this episode. Yeah, man. Why is your device so new, right? Whatever that means, and I don't know how long we'll even have technological devices that are anywhere near anything like we have nowadays, but we started having technological devices, and each time they upgrade one, I remember being in high school and I wanted the newest device that came out. And now I don't care. I actually went to an older device, the one that I'm currently using to film this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 97, titled Why Is Your House So Big? And actually every piece of content for In the Image Clothing Company up until today's date. I've used this thing. This is older than the last device that I had. And yeah, I've discussed things about it, right? The main cameras don't even work on this. I use the front-facing, small, not as good, quote-unquote, camera. I mean, it's not as good, but just meaning, who cares, right? That's what I mean. I was in high school, dude, and I was trying to get the latest and greatest of a lot of things. And it's as we talk about, it just takes experience and understanding and doing things personally to learn. A lot of things you have pretty much no way of actually learning them fully unless you personally experience them. But yeah, right. The point is, and really the answer to the question of the title, Why Is Your House So Big? Episode 97 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, is it doesn't need to be. Regardless of what the reasoning behind you being in the situation you're in is, the answer is, at the end of the day, right, it just doesn't need to be bigger than you need it to be. And a lot of times we don't know what we need because we're striving to get things that we think that we want, things that might make us, ooh, here's the kicker, right? Happy. We talk about happiness so much. We have since at least some of the very first episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Right? I mean, you think that the big house might make you happy until you're all miserable looking at the payments to just live there, right? And how are you going to pay for it is what you're thinking, and not only that, but you also got a fast car in your 12-car garage. You know what I'm saying? So why? Don't answer it from me. Internalize it, don't ponder. Search, ponder, and pray, brother. Right? That's what we do with the scriptures. I mean, you don't just read the scriptures and you're done. You read scriptures and you ponder on them, You don't just go out there and think like, all right, cool, we'll get the biggest house just because, well, it seems to be the best. Well, you sit there and ponder on it. Well, why? Would I actually need this? And what am I using it for? And if I do think I need it, is it just that I think I need it? Or do I actually? And are there reasons? And because sometimes there are, right? I'm not saying that people can't have a big house, but I know that almost every single person who ever does get a house is just bigger than they actually need, which our actual needs are so much less than we often think in every aspect of a human being, because we're conditional. So we grasp for things and we hold on to things and we want to try to secure things and do the opposite of what it means to have daily bread, and really do the opposite of what it means to have faith. Because faith can be hard to have. And it can seem easier to take things into our own hands and try to just make sure that we get all that we need, but we can't make sure of that. You really can't. No matter what you want to believe, I don't care, because I don't believe in anything. Is that a shock to you? Talked about some electric water beds the other day, filled with eels, right? That's a shock. I don't believe in anything, but the gospel of Jesus Christ is the truth of all things. Really, Jesus Christ himself is just the great I am. He's God, and there he is. If you take away all the big houses and try to find a place to get some shelter from the rain. You know what I mean? Yikes. So, let's play some guitar. That's unreal. Yeah, that was hard hitting because that's, right, summed up. I don't know. We might keep talking for another, who knows, but maybe not. Let's do some strumming, brother, because sometimes I do. Why is your house so big? Why is your guitar so big? You know, I talk about half-sized guitars because this is massive. Why are your two highest strings so small when it comes to steel strings, right? I mean, that's weird. That's very strange, brother, but it is what it is. Yeah, it's weird. If I were to be saying something, you know, it's weird to have a house that's much bigger than you actually need and have more money than you actually need and have a faster car than you actually need, you know. And this can be applied to anything that's a similar type of thing like that in life, ever. And, you know, maybe there's things that don't even exist yet, and you're watching this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast in like 500 years from today's date, potentially. I mean, I don't know, right? And there's things that we didn't even have when I was saying this, as far as just human beings on our earth. Well, unless, you know, we're not quite here in the same way because God comes. Either way, that's what I mean is, you know, why is your house so big? Like, it's a good question to ask yourself. And I think this is a big thing too, is why are guitars so big? And I'm not ignorant to what size can do with guitars. I know a lot about guitars, bro. I don't care how much I don't know about them, but there is a lot that I know about them. And I get it. You know, you got a bigger body of guitar, and you can fill an auditorium with sound waves because they're just, you know, able to do more in the ways that they are. You know, you've got a bigger volume of guitar body and you've got more area for the sound waves to resonate, and right, I get it, but I mean, the human body is the thing we use to play guitar, and it only ever works closest to its center line the best, and the farther away from its own center line it gets, it has a really hard time even operating at all. So you've got really huge guitars sometimes. And, right, we're out of touch. We think sometimes that the importance of what we, yeah, right? we lose touch, and it's sad. I have, right? I mean, I'm just as human as anybody, but there are a lot of things that I understand a lot deeper than a lot of other people. Takes experience, and why is your house so big, dude? So I keep out this guitar here, full size guitar. I keep it on the 5th fret, and or somewhere around there, but right now that's where it's at. And then I'm a little bit closer to the only way that my body actually works. Unreal, right? But yeah, right? We can't lose ourselves in the things that we could choose to acquire. We can't lose God, the only truth that exists, in all the things that pop up here and there on the earth. Right? Meaning the man-made things that we call the world. And so why? I mean, just what's the real reason? Right? What's the real reason, dude? Yeah, bro. What's the reason? Why is your house so big, dude? I mean, I think the big thing is sometimes it can make families less close because whoever's providing the money, and maybe that's pretty well equally or even equally split between the two parents of the family, or maybe it's just solely one person bringing income into the house. That person is spending more time than they would need to pay for the house because they have to make the money somehow, and then all the things that come from I don't know what that sound was. I don't know if you heard that in the mic, but yeah, all the things that come through paying for the place you live, that takes your attention, it takes your time, and your kids get less of both of those things. And money, even, right? Just being the resource that it is, maybe you're eating less well or often or something because you want to pay for the house that you don't need to be as large as it is, or the other person, right? Same thing with the money. Maybe it's equally split, or maybe one person's solely doing it, or maybe it's close to equally split, who's taking care of the house rather than just, doing what it takes to pay for it to be something that you can live within. Whoever is trying to do all that it takes to take care of the house, that person now, has more time and attention going to that than going to the family and the kids and, really just the only things that actually matter. And so there's a lot that actually, like I said a few minutes back, or however many minutes ago it was, within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, somewhere, episode 97, titled How Big Is Your House? Except that's not. Everybody just send me a letter, like A or P or W. How big is your house? Correspond it with which number of placement it is within the 26-letter English language alphabet. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, it's like whatever I was saying, it probably made some sense. And I don't know if I finished it or not, so maybe it didn't end up making much sense. But the point is, why is your house so big, dude? Because what I was saying is, yeah, there's so many things that are just undisputed benefits of having a smaller house over a bigger one. I mean, to a degree, but just as big as you need and only that, and then you're good. I mean, then you're good. That's real. I mean, that's something. There's no opinion. And just said this simply, and everything that could be anything as a human being, if we have what we need, then we have what we need. And it's great to know what it actually means to need something rather than feel like we do, or rather than have wants that we label as needs. But again, right, as we always come back to, just meaning whether I say it or not, just the truth of it, we're sinful by nature, and we are conditional beings. We have conditions of needing shelter, otherwise we could freeze to death or overheat or get scorched by the sun or get caught in a sandstorm and just not even be able to breathe. We're conditional beings in the ways that we need to be able to eat, otherwise we will wither away and die, right? We need to stay hydrated, and we talk about how to really do that here under In the Image Clothing Company. It's very misunderstood very often by a lot of people, myself in the past as well. So, right, I mean, being a conditional being, that's something that just kind of makes it so it's highly probable for our wants versus needs to be a little bit wishy-washy, a little bit overlapping and skewed, rather than being able to know what it really means to need something. Myself as well. I mean, yeah, I don't, right? I mean, a lot of times I'm trying so hard to get something that I think that I need, but it's actually just a want. And sometimes it just takes us some time to understand that. And that's not a bad thing, right? I mean, we go through experiences, and that's how we learn. As I said a little while back here, I mean, it's great to learn from experience. And often those experiences are stuff that we probably wouldn't have wanted to have happen. But, like maybe getting evicted from your house, or, whatever that word could be used as, meaning, whatever could happen to cause you to not be able to live at the place that you were. And, in the case of it just being too big of a house that you couldn't even afford, but you, let's say, had enough money to totally afford the size of house that you actually need to just dwell within, fairly comfortably. See what I mean? Like, why is your house so big, dude? Because, I mean, I do whatever you want, but there's so much that comes with stuff like that. Ownership over things that's, well, right, because ownership over things isn't ownership. You think you own it until you get evicted, then how did you own it if someone can just take it from you? Right? There's conditions on those things. There's not conditions on having a human body. Meaning, if you have one, you have one, and we all don't once we die, but then we, like I said, and it's not my words or opinion, but we get resurrected through Jesus Christ, but the prerequisite is death. And yeah, death comes first, But then we get our bodies back, and you don't get the house back that got taken from you because you couldn't make the payments in whatever way they were requiring you to, quote unquote, pay for it, right? Yeah, God paid the price by dying for us to have our lives forever. And that's not a decision that we could even make or not. So, eternal truths, right? Why is your house so big? See what I'm saying? I think you see what I'm saying. So, yeah. Yeah, dude. You got to kind of lose your life to gain it. And now let me make that a little bit more clarified. I can just kind of casually say that, or I can quote scripture and say that, what Jesus Christ tells us, which is just our God saying to us, meaning the one who created us. For those of you who don't know, stick around, right? You got a problem with that because you came from some man-made religion somewhere, and sure, cool, come from wherever, because all are welcome into the body of Christ. But, don't come in with a judgment. You got to know what's really going on because it's the truth of all things. And Jesus Christ, our living God himself, he tells us those who try to save their lives will lose them. But those who lose their life for Jesus Christ says, my sake, meaning his sake, right? They will actually gain their life. Like I'm saying, if you lose your life, if you give up all the things that could be like your quote unquote worldly life, then you will actually gain eternal life perfected through Jesus Christ after this earthly little probationary state ends. And you close your eyes for the last time and exhale for the last time and, stop living in the ways that you have been used to doing it. So, why is your house so big? Benefits to having something that's not excessively big, fast, new, expensive, flashy, showy, right? Like I'm saying, this phrase of the title here could be applied to anything that's a similar thing where you can have a house that's a very simple little shelter, or you can have a house that could house 500 people comfortably and each of them having their own space within it, right? You could apply that to anything and just say, where's the line from needs are met to now it's excessive, right? So, it just happens to me, and it just will, it'll continue to happen to me. That's the other thing too, right? Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's something that's kind of misunderstood, and that's why we make it clear here under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, at least that's why I have so many times, that we're sinful by nature. All the things that we learn aren't so good to do. It doesn't mean we're just going to stop doing them once we've learned they're not so good to do. Right? Once you've been redeemed from the sins you've made, and once you've repented for the wrongs you've done, you'll probably do them again. We're never recovered, we're just in a recovery. So, when I'm talking about this, I'm not just sitting here like I've perfected the art of not having more than I need or something, because no, it's not the case. In a lot of ways, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at it. At giving up, quote unquote, the option of getting something more than I actually need for just having what I do need. Yeah, I'm getting good at it, and I am currently pretty good at it in a lot of ways. But, right, down the road of this earthly journey, I might come up against some things that are choices of mine to make in ways that happens, right? Maybe one day I'll be looking for houses and have this idea that I might need something that's actually more than I ever would, right? It's not like I've just right? Well, it's like one of these past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast is titled "The Therapist Would Get More," and within there I talked about how I talked about what we talk about often here, and just what we talk about within the truth of all things, the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're never going to be perfect in this life. We're not trying to actually be perfect by the time life's over. We're striving to get more Christ-like and closer to Jesus Christ. And he's perfect, so yeah, we'll get closer to perfect in this life, but never will any human being besides God himself be perfect in their earthly life, right? Because God was perfect in his 33-year life, but we're not him. And so I know I'm the one asking the question, but that's why I say it's something to ponder about. It's a question that I'll always have the ability to be asking myself. Metaphorically, if we're not talking about a physical dwelling place, whatever it could be applied to, why is my house so big? Whenever I'm trying to get something and I'm, being a little bit desirous to get more than is actually necessary, right? So anyway, dude, it just happens. It happens to the best of us. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, but I like it. I just said it in kind of a mocking voice because who's the best of us, right? We know, and everybody that ever exists isn't the best. Jesus Christ is. And when I said everybody, I just mean all his equal kids, us human beings, sons and daughters of God. That's a crazy thing to say if you don't know, right? Again, if you are new to the truth, stick around. In the Image Clothing Company podcast, we discuss things as they are, and I will never do it perfect, but it's good to know who you really are. It's good to know that there actually is only one truth and nobody can actually decide what it is. So stick around, dude. In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Watch your life be transformed by allowing our God to do with you what he needs. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled As a Vessel. And we're supposed to be willing to be used as a vessel. Our physical bodies are just a vessel that carries our spirits through this life, right? I mean, we can get so deep with talking about stuff, and we do. I love it. Yeah. So, anyway, cool. Willingness. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled that. I just, said a minute ago, or however long ago it was. Probably not, it wasn't a minute ago, but, we need to be willing to be used as a vessel, so there you go. Yeah. Why your clothing's so nice, right? You love the grammar on that, don't you? I did. Yeah. Why is your clothing so fancy, and why did it cost so much? Right? And then it doesn't actually keep you warm. And it doesn't actually feel comfortable to wear. You see what I mean? Similar thing. That's that's what it is, dude. So if you ever have any questions on life, welcome to the club. Yeah. There's only one truth, dude. Jesus Christ is that truth. Yeah. Can we just play some off-tempo music and have a good time? Yeah, dude. I'd say so. Off camber, brother. unorthodox and untraditional. I love that. That's something that just kind of, I mean, I've said it on in the Image Clothing Company podcast as well. I think it came just out of my mouth one time doing a freestyle vocalization and playing with my little guitar that I had, Frank the guitar, who I broke intentionally. The Greatest Battle is the title of the episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast where I discussed how music has been that in my life. But yeah, that's how I describe myself. Unorthodox and untraditional. Yeah, I'm very different, dude. So, anyway, thank you. Seriously, it's just been so cool, dude, to watch this grow. Because I say this way, as far as human beings go, right? I'm the only one that's done anything that In the Image Clothing Company is as of today's date, the 11th of April, 2025. Yeah, but you know, it's not me that's doing it. Because what I was saying there is it's been so fun for me to watch this grow. And if people don't really understand the truth and you know that we can't actually really take credit for anything, take that with a grain of salt, but I, you know, just about couldn't without, you know, trying to make it something it isn't, and everything in life. And I've been watching this company grow, and it's cool. It's been really great to be able to be a part of it, right? And again, that's phrased in a way that may not make so much sense to some people, but that's how it is. Yeah. I mean, I'm as of today's date, the sole founder, and you know, it sure doesn't feel like it. It's just been something that it's like I've been invited to, like a party that I didn't throw, but I got to have a good time at. You know, that's that kind of feeling, and that's, you know, just such a, yeah, it's more than I could have ever asked for. Just the experience of what this is as of today, right? If it never got bigger or anything, you know, I mean, yeah. And if you're watching in visual, you can kind of see me looking down, like just out of being humbled by this, you know. Yeah. Audio only, but then visual plus audio. Two forms of viewing in the Image Clothing Company podcast. So, yeah. Well, I mean, right. One form of viewing, and then the other one you're only going to be listening. Unless you're just like staring at something as well, you know, just envisioning me speaking, but you're not actually watching me do it. I don't know. It's just been so fun, dude. It's been so great to be a part of this. And all that's been documented through this too. Not only what we talk about, but yeah, it's been there's a lot that's happened through this just as of today, you know. Up until is what I mean, so. All right, dude. As I say, the phrase, crazy things with nylon strings, from me, Evan Strong. So, what you hear me play when I'm on a steel string guitar, it really is quite a lot different. If you're not a guitarist, but, you know, you hear me play, if you hear me play steel strings, I'm not so comfortable with it at all. So, you can hear comfortability come through when people make music. And so it's even better than when I play steel strings. Anything that you might think is, you know, decent or good or whatever, right? Or amazing, right? Where are you at on the level of thinking Evan Strong's a good guitarist? I think I'm great, dude. I don't even think it. It comes through me. So It's a natural thing, right? There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled I'm a Musician. So, anyway, I know I've said it a few times. I'm going to say it again, though, as we're wrapping up here. 11th of April, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Thank you for listening to episode 97 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Why Is Your House So Big? We will have clothing available, as I have talked about, where and when I have. When it comes, it'll be made out of 100% natural materials, stay centered, fit correct, and that's how we allow the human body to work, because it always would unless we altered it. And so placing clothing on it, we have to be so intentional. Yeah. So oversized clothing in itself is an imbalance, and a very, 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 very damaging one. Personal experience from me when it comes to wearing oversized clothing for years of my life, many, many years. Many years. So try to do all that you can to get it in your size if you ever purchase In the Image Clothing Company clothing. You don't have to, but we'll make it good. We'll do all that we can. That's the only reason we'd have it. So free modifications, though, on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company for clothing you already have. Clothing designs are so similar across the entirety of the earth, and there's only so much you can do, really. I mean, you can add anything, but as far as just clothing, basic stuff to cover the human being, we show what you'll need to know, no matter where you are. So, yeah, that's the goal. The goal is natural. Yeah. So, talk about being humbled. You can probably tell. I mean, I'm just so here, dude. I mean, I'm just grateful for this. It's been awesome. Yeah. The roller coaster too, though, right? I mean, I love it. It's as real as it gets. It's the phrase I say often, one of them. Yeah. Under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, you'll see me in all sorts of quote unquote moods, right? And they're just dynamic to a human being. And I'm just so grateful for this and what it is. So, thank you.